everyone, my name is Susie Lytle. I'm an interpretive naturalist with the Forest Preserve District of Will County, and on this episode we'll be searching for owls, learning more about migrating sandhill cranes, taking a break for a moment of zen, and then investigating some animal bones. So are you ready to reconnect with nature on this episode of The Buzz? Our preserves are a great place to go birding. Across the county there are hot spots full of songbirds, waterfowl, herons, hawks, and so much more. Now usually you have to get up early to find these birds, except there's one exception: owls. They take to the skies at night. Another cool thing is that they're more active in the wintertime than any other season. So now that's getting a little chilly, this is the time they'll start calling, nesting, and raising their young. The most common owls in our area are the eastern screech owl, the barred owl, and the great horned owl. Now the barred owl and the great horned owl I see a lot, but the screech owl has always been very sneaky, and we've been lucky enough to find a spot to get some footage. Now this eastern screech owl is small and it's really camouflaged, so I think that makes it harder. Its voice might not carry as far either, so I've never heard one even. So we're super lucky to catch one in the wild. This owl is the smallest owl in Illinois and is actually full grown at around 8 inches. So it does look like a baby owl, but it's not. This screech owl is a smaller owl, so it's going to eat smaller things. Think of like crickets, moths, spiders, and it does eat smaller mice and birds. It also comes into 2 colors, so there's a rusty red and a mottled gray. This is perfect because it blends right into the tree bark. Just like other owls, they're not great nest builders, so you'll see them peeking out their heads in tree cavities or holes made by woodpeckers. Now, eastern screech owls have a pretty cool call. You would think that their name may suggest that it screeches, but actually it's more like a whinny neigh sound from a horse, sort of like woo, woo. Here in November, the first one to call is also the largest and lives in many different habitats. It can be in the deep forest like this one, or in your own backyard in your neighborhoods. It's the great horned owl. The first thing the owls have to do is find each other. To do that, they sound out a call. Their call is that classic owl sound. Woo-hoo, 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 woo-hoo. When they hear that, they can find each other and do a little courtship dance and move on to nesting. They're mostly monogamous, so they meet up with the same partner each year. Owls are terrible nest builders, so they don't even try to build anything. Instead, they move into an already done home made by hawks, crows, squirrels, or even hollow trees made by the woodpeckers. Once they begin nesting, it's usually around January, and it's a tough time to lay eggs. If the eggs freeze, they won't survive. So the female and male take turns sitting on the nest and hunting. Come April, the babies are all fluffy and start venturing out on their own. It's no coincidence that these owls start before everybody else. Once their babies are grown enough, they have to figure out how to hunt on their own. Luckily, there's a lot of easy pickings in spring. Think about it, there's a lot of early birds that are nesting, young snakes, mice, all of that is baby season in the spring, and the owls are big enough to swoop in for their meal. So this owl is real, however it is taxidermy, so it's a stuffed owl we use for education. Great horned owls are also known as the tiger of the woods, and that's because they have awesome adaptations that make them silent and effective hunters. Look how big these eyes are. Owls have really big eyes. If we had the same proportion of eyes to our body, we would be walking around with grapefruit as eyes. So these eyes are big and they have big pupils to collect light at night. That helps them really see in the dark skies. If we look at their feathers, we know they're silent flight. So since they're silent, they have combed or fringe edges, so the air can pass through when they have their wings open and you won't hear a thing. Down below are the toes. So they have 3 toes in front, 1 in back. But there's a flexible joint being able to move one toe from the front to the back to help with that grip. And you'll also see these long, sharp talons. They can help squeeze. They can squeeze 200 to 500 pounds per square inch. That's a lot of pressure. Looking for owls can be challenging because they're masters of camouflage. So during the day, I'm scanning the top of the trees, looking for big blobs that just don't seem to fit in. Great horns are easier because their silhouette has those bumacorns. Screeches are a little bit harder because most of the time they're hiding in tree holes and cavities. You got to think about their behavior too. During the day, they're going to be roosting, not necessarily moving around a lot. So I look at the trunk of the tree, follow it up, and see if anything's leaning against it. Now, if I don't see anything, chances are I might hear things. You got to keep your ears perked because there's sometimes they'll call during the day. I do look high in the trees for the owls, but also down on the ground for their signs. So at the base of big trees like this, I try to look on the ground, see if I see any pellets, fur, bones. Personally, I find finding owl pellets easier to do in the springtime. Right now, there's a lot of leaves on the ground, so chances are it could fall and be buried underneath all this. You can also look for their splay. Splay is fancy for bird poop. So the trees will be covered in white. Looks like someone painted all white down the tree. That's a good sign. Once a great horned owl reaches maturity into adults, there's not much that can take it down. It's the top of the food chain. Its one big predator is humans. So when looking for owls, make sure to give them their space. If the owl seems to be moving around, you're too close. Make sure you got good binoculars or a long lens and give it room. Also think about poison. We find a lot of poisoned owls. And I know, you're not meaning to poison the owl, it's the mice. So when you have mice in your home, consider snap traps, because once you poison one thing, it poisons the whole food web. Now's the time of year to renew your dog park passes. Check out these parks near you.
Nothing beats fun at the dog park. The District's 6 dog parks provide a chance to break out of the daily routine while getting some fresh air. Our 4-legged friends of all sizes love running free in any season. There's plenty of room to roam and explore off-leash. There are sweet spots to chill out, too. Don't forget about the many wonderful scents to mentally stimulate your dog. Buy a dog park permit so your dog can make new friends and maybe even find someone to share a stick with. 2021 dog park permits can now be purchased online and are also good for the remainder of 2020. Fetch your permit today at reconnectwithnature.org.
Sandhill cranes are on the move, so let's take a moment to learn more about them before they fly out of sight. Do you hear trumpets in the sky? Well, you're not crazy. There's a whole symphony flying over us starting late October throughout December. Our forest preserves are located right in the middle of a migration flyway for the sandhill cranes. These cranes are going to be looking for marshy areas, open fields, prairies, and maybe even your yard. They're going to stop to fuel up on food, check in with their fellow cranes, and then find a safe place to spend the night before heading out on their continued journey down south for their wintering grounds. Sandhill cranes sometimes get confused for egrets and herons, so let's break it down. First up, the egret, which is the smallest of the bunch, and they're all white. Then we have the heron, next in size, with a grayish body and a black eye stripe along its face. The sandhill cranes are 5 feet tall with a 6-foot wingspan. They have yellow eyes, a black bill, black legs and feet, with a grayish body. Now sometimes they can put some mud on their feathers that give them a brown hue that helps them blend into their environment. Another noteworthy characteristic is their crimson red patch of skin on their head. It's really hard to miss. Now when they're flying, egrets and herons tuck their neck in. A sandhill crane keeps their neck straight out the whole time. When you're looking at sandhill cranes up in the sky, you're looking for that long outstretched neck, feet out as well, with big wingspan. They also fly in a V formation, just like geese, but the geese are on a mission. They're flying straight and they're flapping a lot. Sandhill cranes tend to take their time with slower wing beats. Now you're gonna hear them way before you see them. Their call can reach 2.5 miles away, and it's due to a long trachea coiled up in the sternum. Picture it like a French horn, all those tubes kind of wrapped in the center. The coil makes the sound loud and rich. The longer the trachea, the louder the bird. And from personal experience, when I hear that call, I stop dead in my tracks. There was one day last year that the wind must have been just right, and we heard those trumpets all day long. The calls, the birds, the flocks, they were coming in like waves on a shore. Thousands of cranes overhead. It was truly amazing. So there's 15 kinds of cranes around the world. In North America, we have 2, the common sandhill crane and the rarest of the bunch, the whooping crane. Now, sandhill cranes are broke down further into subspecies. A subspecies is a population of cranes that really just breed together. Subspecies don't breed with each other. So there's a few that stick all year round in Florida, Mississippi, and Cuba. And then we see the migration ones, the lesser sandhill cranes, and in our area, the greater sandhill cranes. During migration, these cranes can fly 200 to 300 miles per day at top speeds of 35 miles per hour. They start off breeding in Canada, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, and then they travel through our area to make it to Georgia or Florida for the winter. Now, these cranes fly in family groups, usually 2 adults with 1 or 2 immatures or juveniles. They also form bachelor flocks of those birds that are old enough to be on their own but haven't found a mate just yet. Now, even though cranes are supposed to migrate, there's some that just don't read the guidebooks. We had a pair of cranes here right along the old Plank Road Trail, New Lenox, that came in the spring, stayed in the summer, and even throughout the winter. The locals were really lucky to have this pair and even named them. They observed them finding food around the whole wetland and then finding the right spot to spend the night, sheltered and safe from the predators. I hope I've convinced you that sandhill cranes are a very special bird, but if not, I've got one more fun fact for you. It's thought that sandhill cranes are one of the oldest bird species known. Researchers have found fossils in Nebraska and Florida dating 2.5 million years old. And in the fossils, the structure is identical to the sandhill crane birds we see today. So make sure you get outside, keep your eyes on the sky for them flying over, eyes peeled along the trails and open areas to find them feeding, and hope that you find some this season. And remember, check your neighbor's yard. If they have a new bird lawn ornament, make sure it's not real, because they can just hang out right by your house. Let's sit back and relax with this moment of Zen. You may be used to seeing deer and coyotes running through the preserves, but now I'm going to give you a different view of these animals. Did you know there are 62 different types of mammals right here in Illinois? Now, just because we don't see all of them doesn't mean they're not here. They leave behind clues in our forest preserves. Tracks, scat, skulls, bones, all of these are signs that the animals are among us. Today we're going to investigate the bones and fur, and I'll give you tips on how to ID what you find. Here are 3 rules to keep in mind when we're IDing the skulls. Number 1, know the likely suspects. As wicked awesome as it would be to find a dinosaur, chances are those bones belong to coyotes, raccoons, squirrels, something local in our area. Number 2, size does matter. A deer is much bigger than a possum, so their skulls are going to be coordinating to their sizes. And number 3, look at the teeth. The teeth are going to hold clues that tell what kind of diets that animal's eating. So if we can figure out that gives us a shorter list of who to choose from. One of the more recognizable animal signs that you may find are antlers. Male deer shed their antlers after breeding season, which is usually somewhere between December through April. Now, these antlers grow bigger and bigger each year. However, they do eventually level out and stay the same size. Genetics and nutrition also have a say on how big they'll get. So let's check out the skull. You can tell by looking at this skull that it's a male deer. And how? Well, do you notice that there's little knobs where the antlers used to be? Now, a lot of people think you can age a deer by looking at how big the antlers are. But a good way to do it is looking at the teeth. You can see how worn down they are or how much enamel is left. If it's more worn, that means it's an older deer. You can also look at the teeth to figure out what they eat. We know deers are herbivores and the teeth match. There are a lot of molars, perfect for grinding up plants. Deer are active all winter long, so that means their fur coat has to adapt. These hairs are pretty stiff, and that's because each individual follicle is hollow, trapping in the heat, keeping that deer warm. And our deer are called white-tailed deer. Ever wonder why? Well, just like the name suggests, their tails are white, and they flash them for a signal. It could be a predator's close, or hey, I see some humans walking on the trail. Now, we have lots of pet dogs at home. How can you tell the difference between a coyote and a domestic dog? The clue is in the canines. So if the canines go all the way down past the gum line, that's a coyote. Our domestic dog's canines are much shorter. Now, I have another skull that's similar. Similar teeth, similar structure, but smaller in size. This one belongs to a fox. Now, taking a closer look at the tops of the skulls, this fox has kind of a ridge that goes all the way down to the bottom, making a V. This one cuts pretty short. So this is the coyote, and this is the fox. Now, when we compare the furs, I bet you can tell the difference. Coyotes are a little bit bigger with tanner, black colors. Foxes, a little smaller with that nice golden orange. And their tails are a little different. So they both have the same kind of shape, with big fluffy tails, but their tips are different colors. The coyotes is black, where the foxes are white. So we've seen an herbivore, we've seen a carnivore, now let's check out an omnivore. This skull belongs to a possum, and possums have both pointy teeth and blunt molars in the back for plants and animals. They also have lots of teeth. They have 50 in total. This makes it the most teeth out of any North American land mammal. For comparison, adult humans only have 32 teeth. What is also noteworthy about this skull is a crest on top. It's pretty pronounced, and no other skull I see has that. I think possums are so cute. They have white faces with a cool pattern on their back, like black fur underneath, white tips on top. And what's awesome is that they're marsupials. Now, marsupial is like a kangaroo and a koala. They all have pouches to raise their young. These possums also have long, skinny, rat-like tails that are prehensile. So it acts like an arm that can grip on its own, like on branches or while it's climbing. Rodents all have something in common. These huge front incisors. So you may see these on mice, voles, squirrels, rabbits, muskrats, and beavers. Now, a beaver is kind of special because it's this bright orange color, and that's because there's iron in there. And the iron makes the color, plus makes them strong. You'll notice too that the beaver has these big flat molars, just like the deer, because they're herbivores. So this is great for grinding down all those plants, roots, leaves, anything that they're gonna eat. Now, beavers spend a lot of time in the water, so their fur has to be ready for that. and they create their own oil to rub in, making them waterproof. And their big tails have a lot of jobs. They act like a rudder when they're swimming, a kickstand when they're eating or chewing down a tree, and they store fat for the winter. No animals were hurt in filming this show. Those furs and bones are used for educational programs and are bought off of science supply websites. Now, if you find some animal clues along the trail, feel free to get a closer look and use some of those tips we talked about. But please leave them where you found them. Everything in nature is connected, so there's going to be decomposers working on those bones. Birds might want to use the furs to insulate their nest, so there's lots of uses still. And please look around for more signs. There could be feathers, snakeskin, nests, and so much more. Animals are all around us if you know where to look. Right now our preserves are full of owls calling, cranes flying, and mysterious bones. So it's your turn to map your next adventure at reconnectwithnature.org to find the latest news on wildlife and new places to explore. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you next time on The Buzz.